Excellent. Good morning, everyone. We are going to give it a few minutes and then we're going to get started. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to have Drew back with us. We're excited for you all to learn about his, method to surviving a recession that's surely to come. And we'll just give it a few more before we get started. Hope everyone's having a good Tuesday so far. I know getting back to the norm after the Halloween and now gearing up for Thanksgiving for the US folks and our Canadian folks just had their Thanksgiving a couple weeks ago. Jimmy, did you do anything exciting for Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving in the Canada. Yeah, it's how should I say it? I don't really celebrate it too much myself personally. I'm more of a Christmas type of guy, so
Yeah.
yeah. But I know US Thanksgiving, it's coming up. It must be exciting for you guys though.
Yeah, definitely. And Drew, you've had a crazy couple weeks. I bet you're ready to get back to the holiday season and enjoy some family and rest and rejuvenation.
Yeah, so Jimmy, you're missing out on Thanksgiving. It's all about the food. No obligation for gifts or anything like that. Just show up and gorge yourself.
True. Yeah. Are you saying I'm invited to yours next year? Is that
Absolutely.
what I'm or maybe even this year?
You can come down this year, you bet.
Yeah.
We have room.
Perfect.
All right.
We'll give it about
I guess it's
one more minute, or do you want to get started, Jimmy?
Yeah, I think maybe we can get started. It's 11:02.
Perfect. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to start off with just a reminder that this is how to survive and thrive during an economic downturn. Drew will go through some ways, actionable steps to basically prepare your agency for a recession. And that being said, just a quick agenda. So we'll do introductions here briefly. You'll get to learn a little bit more about who Function Point is if you're not familiar, as well as AMI. So we'll dive right into Drew's content, and we'll do a Q&A at the end from the audience. So just so everyone's aware, this is going to be recorded and will be sent out to all registrants within the next 24 hours. And so if you would like to watch it back, you absolutely can do that. If you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, there's a little control panel that's typically going to show up on your right side of your computer. There are a space for questions where you can add. We'll stop and interrupt Drew when appropriate to ask any questions. So feel free to engage there. Feel free to throw in any specific questions that you have, and we will get to them throughout the presentation. And then we'll of course have a Q&A at the end. Okay, I'm your host. My name is Victoria. I'm the Director of Strategic Alliances and Partnerships here at Function Point. And then we also have Jimmy here in the background, and he's our Director of Sales and Marketing. Both of us have been with Function Point for quite a bit and are very excited to once again welcome a wonderful guest who is Drew McLellan. Drew, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. If you are not familiar with Agency Management Institute, we are basically an organization that works with agencies on the back end of their business. So teaching them how to run the business of their business better. So I've been an agency guy forever. It's all I've ever done actually. So I started my first job when I was doing my graduate work at Gray Advertising, and then owned my own agency, which I still own today for almost 30 years. And I've owned AMI since 2010. We work with lots of agencies all over the world actually. predominantly in North America, but lots of folks in Europe and Australia as well. We've got a podcast that you're welcome to listen to. Every week there's a new episode talking about how to build a better agency. So again, back of the house stuff, biz dev, HR issues, sales, things like that, financials. And I get to write for a lot of publications about our industry. So that's me.
Excellent. Perfect. Jimmy, do you mind speaking a little bit about Function Point?
Yeah, so for those of you who are not familiar with Function Point, we are an all-in-one agency management software designed only for the creative industry. So that includes, our goal is to centralize your entire business workflow into one central platform so that at the end of the day, you have one place, one single source of truth to access all your business intelligence and operational insights. And how we do that is consolidating your CRM estimating, your project management, your resource management, and also your time tracking, invoicing, or your agency financials into one place. So, now a little bit about Function Point. We've been around since 1997, so we just celebrated 25 years, and 90.7% of the companies saw an ROI after implementing Function Point at one time or another. In fact, we find that with Function Point users compared to non-Function Point users in our industry report, it's shown that they achieve on average 4% additional billable and billability in their agency. So. And one of the cool things, I've worked in the tech industry for 15 years, and Function Point, on top of all the existing operations, we invest an additional 15% of our revenue into product development annually to keep things up. So a little bit about Function Point. And if you want to learn more, feel free to visit our website or reach out to our sales team at sales@functionpoint.com.
Excellent. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn screen sharing over to Drew. So just bear with me here for just a second. Yep, Drew, you should have control now, I think.
All right.
Oh, maybe not. Hold on. Here we are. There we go. Okay.
All right, so hang on, I'm going to show my screen. Oh, you know what? It's telling me that I have to do permission. So you know what, Victoria, why don't you just drive and we'll
Okay.
just talk to the slides.
Sure. Give me just a moment. Get back to it. All right.
Technology.
So while Victoria's working on the screen share, just a quick reminder for everyone that, again, in your GoToWebinar control panel, there is a questions module. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, you don't have to wait till the end. Feel free to jump them in, but we will be sharing the slide deck and the video recording afterwards to all attendees and registrants.
Yeah, and I absolutely do not mind being interrupted in the middle. So pop in as you need to with questions.
Okay. All right. Can everybody see this properly?
I can, so I'm.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so first what I'm going to say to you is the reality is whether a recession is coming, a recession is here, a recession is around the corner, everything we're going to talk about today are just good practices. They just become more important when there's a squeeze economically. So I'm going to talk a little bit about pricing, around contracts, really getting your new business program in order, what you need to be thinking about for your employees, and one of the biggest mistakes agency owners make every day of the year is leaving too much money in the business, but it's particularly dangerous during an economic downturn or a recession. So we're going to talk about all of that. All right, so I know a lot of people, a lot of agents. So my world consists of talking to agency owners pretty much all day, every day, 7 days a week. And I know that there is some trepidation about going into 2023. A lot of people are like, oh, we're having a great year this year, but I'm not sure about 23. And I will tell you, no matter what the economic condition is, everything we're going to talk about requires discipline and focus, but there is no reason in any type of economy that your agency cannot be profitable and cannot achieve a 20% profit margin. The trick is that you just have to run it by the numbers, and that's what a lot of agency owners don't do. And so when when things are tight, it's even more important that we allow the best practices to kind of dictate our decisions. So, but you can have a great year in 2023, and we're going to talk about how. So, all right. So first, I want to talk a little bit when we're going to talk about numbers. I want to make sure that we're all square on this. So in our industry, there's a lot of confusion between gross revenue and adjusted gross income. So gross revenue is everything you bill a client. So it is all of the money that they owe you for your time and your expertise. And it's also all the money that they owe you because you're basically their bank. You're buying media on their behalf or printing or other out-of-pocket expenses, including contractors. So most agencies today are a blend of employees and contractors or freelancers. Contractors and freelancers are actually a cost of goods because you wouldn't give them money if they weren't performing a specific task for a specific client. So that's revenue. When you subtract, so go ahead, Victoria, move to the next slide. So revenue or billings or sales, gross revenue, however you want to call that, when you subtract all of your cost of goods, so again, that's all of the things you buy on behalf of a client that they pay you for that you then have to pay a bill to some vendor for, including contractors. What's left is adjusted gross income, and that's actually the money that an agency gets to spend on running their own business. All right, next slide, Victoria. So again, if you look at adjusted gross income, people always say, well, what percentage should that be? And honestly, it depends on your agency and what kind of work you used to. So in the good old days, if an agency could get 30% of their gross billings to drop down to their adjusted gross income line, that was great. Now today, on average, it's closer to 55 to 60%. But you can see here, the slide got a little jacked up, but you can see here that, you know, for a PR firm, it could be 75 to 90%. For a media agency, it might be only 25%. So depending on what kind of an agency you run and the kind of work you do, that this number, so there is no right answer to this, but there is a right answer for your type of agency. Nonetheless, adjusted gross income is the money that we have to spend on running our business. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and sorry, there's some formatting issues here.
Yeah, so, and you'll get the deck, so it won't be jacked up when you get the deck. But anyway, so again, the average agency keeps 56 cents on the dollar. So for every dollar you bill, you will get 56 cents of that dollar. And again, your mileage may vary, but just understand that you have to sort of understand the difference between gross revenue and adjusted gross income. Okay, go ahead. So let's talk about how agencies spend their AGI. Go ahead. So here's the ideal. This is the gold standard, is that you would spend 55% of your adjusted gross income on what we call loaded salaries or salaries and benefits, 25% on overhead, and you would leave yourself 20% in profit. Typically, most agencies ride between a 20 or 25% overhead, and the variance is often in between the salaries and the profits. We often steal from ourselves to pay our people, which is, as you might imagine, not a brilliant business plan. So the average, go ahead, Victoria, you were right spot on. The average in the US is 68% salary and benefits, 26% overhead, and only leaving yourself 6% for profit. But when you start paying attention to this number, it changes. Go ahead. So at AMI, we make all of our member agencies track and actually turn in their financials to us. We see their P&L, we see their balance sheet, and they, on average, ride much closer to this line. 58, 24, 18 was the average for 2021 and the first half of 2022. And the reason is it's not that AMI is magic. The reason is we make them measure it all the time. And what you measure matters. And so because they're paying attention to this number, they make different decisions based on the data that they have in front of them on a regular basis. So any of you can accomplish these exact same numbers and have nothing to do with AMI. It's just a matter of actually tracking them. Okay, go ahead, Victoria. So the key for you is that payroll plus overhead should not be greater than 80%. So many of you have moved to a hybrid model, or you've vacated your office and you're working remote, and so your overhead numbers may be changing. I don't care if you steal from overhead to have a bigger payroll, but I do care when you steal from your own profit. Now you're stealing from your family, and you need to be better about paying attention to that 20%. So, okay. All right. So again, this is all about you being able to control the profit that you make and make sure that you're protecting 20%. And that's going to be our goal even in 2023. Okay. So again, if you need a visual, this is it right here. This, if people often ask me, I don't know why they ask me this question, but if there was an AMI tattoo, what would it be? And it would be 55, 25, 20. So if you're so inclined, have at it. All right, go ahead. All right, so let's talk about the 5 things I need you to do this year, and honestly, every year. And it just becomes a heavier weight to get this done. And you could get all of this done, by the way, before the end of the year. So you would be going into 2023 in a really good position. The first one is pricing. So literally across North America, on average, agencies bill $150 an hour. And I don't care if you're a New York City agency, I don't care if you're in Tupelo, Mississippi, it does not matter. For some reason, we have sat at $150 an hour for over a decade. But the reality is our costs have changed dramatically. The cost, as we all know, the cost of employees has increased. The speed at which we do work, we're quicker, we're faster, we're more efficient, which in essence penalizes us when we bill by the hour. And many of you don't bill by the hour, but you use an hourly rate to calculate a project price or a fee. So even if you don't bill by the hour, which I would say 95% of agencies do not bill by the hour anymore, it still impacts how you get paid for your work. The quality of your work is good, there's inflation. And when you think about it, there is no other business on the planet that has not raised rates in over a decade. Agencies need to get to about $175 an hour. And you can, this is perfect timing if you have rates in your contracts, when you go to renew your contracts, warning clients that you're going to increase rates. And again, justifying it with all of these bullet points and the fact that you have not raised your rates in a long time. If you don't have contracts or you don't have your billable fee and you just basically use the average hourly rate to calculate costs that you then give clients, and then you might say, this website's $50,000. You don't tell them how many hours it is, but you just tell them that. Then you just want to make your adjustment to $175 an hour, and then your prices are just going to, rise accordingly. This is much easier to do, as you might imagine, with new clients and new projects, but you should be thinking about the strategy to do this before the end of the year with even existing clients. And I think, a simple letter or email that just says, we love working with you. We're proud that we've been your agency for X number of years. As you probably have noticed, we've held our prices steady for X, whatever that period is. But because of what's going on with the cost of employees and inflation and all these other things, we, like every other business, are having to make a rate adjustment. So it can be super simple, but you could certainly have it in place by the time 2023 rolls around. All right, so let's talk about contracts. So first of all, you need to have some. If you don't have contracts, that's problem number 1. So if you are a project shop, maybe they're just project authorizations, but your clients need to sign them before you start the work. If you have MSAs or annual contracts with clients, your goal is to renew those contracts now for as long as you can. So a year plus, if you can. You want to lock folks in before the economic times start to shift even more than they already have, and get them to sort of commit to doing marketing. There's a lot of great data out there that talks about what happened to companies that did and didn't pause or halt their marketing during a recession. And so all of you need to arm yourself with some language around the importance of, and actually the advantage, it's not even the importance of, the advantage of continuing marketing during a downturn when everybody else has gone silent. You can own a lot more voice during a recession than you can when times are good and everybody's marketing. So A, you need to be talking about that, but B, getting them locked into contracts, getting a longer cancellation clause so that if someone is going to have is going to bail on you that they have to give you 90 days versus the normal 30 or 60 days. You know, if your contract, if you're fortunate enough to have a multi-year contract, make sure that you've got in there a rate escalation clause to at least keep up with inflation. And if you can get somebody to sign a 12 or 18 or 24-month contract, it is worth it to you as we go into 2023 to offer them some sort of a discount, or maybe they get the A team, or maybe they get pushed to the front of the production line. It doesn't have to be money, but giving them some concession around the value of them as a client because they're signing a contract is worth getting that contract signed. All right, let's talk about biz dev. So the reality is during an economic slowdown, people saying yes also slows down. Clients will be slower to decide and to sign a contract. And we've even had some agencies in the last month or so where clients have signed the contract, but then they're slow to get started. So just know that everything may slow down, which means you need to be a little more aggressive. You need to have an active and full pipeline, because everybody is going to elongate the sales cycle a little bit during a recession or an economic downturn. You really cannot count. So many agencies, their biz dev program is that they get referrals. That is not a biz dev program. That is a wish and a prayer. And you really, during an economic tightening, you cannot count on that. So you've got to have an actual new business strategy where you are busy doing biz dev of some kind every single day. Now, I will tell you, this is much easier if you're a specialist versus a generalist. It's difficult to differentiate yourself from the agency down the street when you kind of look and sound and feel just like they do. So finding a depth of expertise in a niche or an industry or a deliverable, anything that differentiates you that you can really put a spotlight on, is going to be very important in the next year. All of you need to have an active content strategy and execution. So you need to be creating a position of authority for your agency. You need to be demonstrating that you are super smart and that you have delivered great success for clients, and you're writing about it. You are teaching how you did it in your content strategy. And again, it's much easier if you are a specialist, because you can really narrow the focus of your content than it is if you are a generalist. But even a generalist, you still have to be out there. Remember that our clients today are doing 75% of their shopping online before they ever reach out to an agency. So your website is actually your most active salesperson, and it has to demonstrate how smart you are, and it has to differentiate you from other agencies. So case studies, testimonials, all of those things become critically important when you are really gearing up your biz dev the way you should. And every one of you should identify what we call a sweet spot client. So it's the ideal client or target for you, and put together a specific outreach program for them. And the reason why 25 is because if you're going to reach out to them every 6 to 8 weeks, and you're going to pop something in the mail to them, or you're going to be sending them something useful and valuable, not a sales pitch, not about you, but it's something they can use. Like, hey, we just created this media checklist in case you're going to be interviewed. Thought you would find it valuable. It's that sort of thing. It's not, hey, we're a great agency, do you have any projects for us? But the reason why 25 matters is because you can't really maintain a relationship with more than 25 targets at the same time. And you really want to be at this in a very consistent way. And so that's why the number 25. And if you are the agency owner, this is your number one job. So if you are busy being an account exec or a creative director or something else, understand, unless you have a full-time salesperson, if you're not doing biz dev, nobody in your shop is doing biz dev, and this is your job. And if you ever were to get serious about your job going into an economic downturn or tightening, and honestly, it doesn't really matter if we actually have a recession or not, because people are freaking out and acting like there's one coming. So you're going to see the behaviors, whether the economy, no matter what the economy does, you're going to see these behaviors we're talking about because everybody's worried about it. So super important that you do your job, and this is your number one job. All right, let's talk a little bit about your team. So as you all know, your team is your greatest asset, but they're also your biggest expense. And you cannot forget either of those realities. And this is really, for most agencies, where you thrive or die. So your employees are the workhorse that gets the work done, that earns the revenue, that allows you to pay them, to pay the bills, to have some profit, to take care of your own family. It's important to recognize, in your own head, that all employees are not created equal. You have almost every one of you has at least one employee that really should not be on your team. And when I just said that, all of you, a name popped into your head. And that employee is a C player, or they stir up trouble and they cause a lot of problems. There's something about them that does not make them the perfect fit for your shop, but maybe they do something that's really hard to do. So here's what I hear all the time. So-and-so is really a pill. They're hard to work with. They make other people cry, but they're really good at SEO or whatever their thing is. You need to do a very good and thorough inventory of your team. And you need to understand who your A players are and who your problem children are. And then actually, in some cases, some of the biggest problem children are the ones who never make a peep, but they're just sort of mediocre at their job. They don't rise above. They don't go the extra mile for you or for clients. So recognizing that all employees are not equal and having a clear understanding about sort of where your employees stand. And then recognizing that you have to treat everybody fairly, but you don't have to treat them equally. Investing in your A players to make them better. So it's often expenses like training and things like that that get cut when times get tough. And actually, that's when you should double down on it. You should be doubling down on your A players. You should be investing in them to make them even smarter and better at their job, but it also makes them stickier. So we do research every year called the Agency Edge Research, and several times we have, in most cases, we talk to CMOs and business owners, people who hire agencies, about why they hire agencies or fire agencies or what they want from their agency. But a couple times we've kind of turned the lens and we've talked to employees. And in 2022, that's what we did. We talked to the employees to find out how they were feeling about being in the industry, post-COVID, how they were feeling about their agency and their work. And one of the things that we learned loud and clear is that they expect their agency to invest in them and help them get better at their job. They're willing to do part of the work too. It's not that they think it's all on us, but they do expect the agency to have a plan for them. And so spending time with your A players, talking to them about their career path and the things that they need to learn to go, let's say you've got somebody who's a junior woodchuck and they want to become a woodchuck. So talking to them about, okay, here are the 5 skills that a woodchuck has that you really don't have to have as a junior woodchuck. So let's put together a plan together of how you can learn and develop these skills. I want to mentor and coach you through that because I know you want a promotion and I want you to stay here and be successful. So let's get you to woodchuck status. So having those conversations, spending some money to train them is going to allow you to keep your best players. We've gone through 2 years where we've been held hostage by employees because we couldn't find enough good employees. There weren't enough people in the candidate pool. That's about to change. If there is a recession, what we're going to see is layoffs and cutbacks and things like that. So the good news is maybe your best players won't be poached as often, but even when times are tough, everybody wants your A players. So don't think that they're not being poached on LinkedIn and all the other places just because times are tough. I promise you, your good people are being poached every single day, and you need to give them reasons to stay. And one of them is to keep investing in them. But you also have to know that depending on what happens, depending on the kind of clients you serve, you may lose some business. And so you need to have a plan mapped out. And it's really quite simple. It's if we lose $1 million, $500,000, $10, whatever the number is, here are the people that have to be laid off within 15 days. If we lose 2 times X, whatever that is, here are the 7 people. You need to have a plan, because right now you're not emotional about it. Right now you're not thinking, oh my gosh, I know that I should let Babette go, but she just put her mom into a nursing home and she's got all these emotional things that she's dealing with her dad and blah, 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 blah. It's really easy to talk ourselves out of doing the staff cutting that we need to when we need to do it. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes agency owners make when we lose a client or things get tough, is that we don't downsize appropriately quickly enough. And what that means is we literally are digging a hole that it just takes us longer and longer to get out of. So have a plan mapped out. Again, here in this order, Here's what has to happen at these trigger points financially. And then you need to share your plan with your CFO or your leadership team or someone, a mentor outside of the organization, but someone who's going to hold you accountable to actually doing this if you have to. Because it's really easy to convince yourself that you don't have to do it. But this is an Achilles heel that will put you in a very uncomfortable financial position very quickly. And my guess is most of you have done this where you haven't cut staff quickly enough, or you know someone who hasn't, and you've watched them dig out of that hole. And so again, having the plan in advance so that, hopefully you never have to execute it. But knowing what you're going to do, having the paperwork and all the documents ready so that you can really just kind of pull the trigger on this as quickly as you need to without having to give it a lot of angst and thought is important. And I don't think any of us should ever take the idea that we're laying off staff lightly, that we are absolutely impacting people's lives, and we should do it thoughtfully and kindly and all of that. But we also can't afford to put our business at risk because we didn't lighten the load appropriately based on the work we have in front of us today and what's coming up in the next 30 or 60 days. All right. So this is probably one of the biggest mistakes I see agency owners make, and I see them make it in good times, bad times, all of those things. Many of you have somewhere in your agency's history, you've had a bumpy year or two, and you swore that you were going to keep a lot of money in the business so that you could weather any storm for as long as you needed to. And so many of you have built up a lot of retained earnings. You're keeping a lot of cash in the business, and it's really not serving you. So I want to remind you of a couple of things. Number one, this is your money, and you've earned it. You've already paid taxes on it. And when you leave it in the business, you create a false sense of security and you make bad decisions. For example, let's go back to, we just lost client X. That's $500,000 in AGI. I should lay off 4 people, but you know what? We've got a lot of money in the bank and there's stuff happening in the pipeline. So I'm going to delay this decision because I can afford to keep paying them for another month or 2 months. And I don't really want to do it because it's hard and they're going to cry and I'm going to cry. And I want to be a good person and they're good people. And it's not fair that they have to get laid off just because all the things that you say to yourself. But the reality is you're literally taking your money, your kid's college fund, your retirement home down payment, your mortgage payment. You're taking money that is yours and you are giving it to someone else because you don't want to do a hard thing. And that's a very dangerous position to be in. So too much money in the business leads to lazy or cowardly decisions where you delay things that you know you need to do just because you're sitting on a big stack of money. So here's what it should look like. You should have 2 to 3 months of operating expense. And when I say operating expense, I mean loaded salaries and overhead. So you can pay all your bills. So you should have 2 to 3 months operating expense in the business. If you have a gorilla client, so a client that's more than 25% of your AGI, for every sort of, I would say 10 or 15% of your AGI that they are above 25%, you need to have another month in the business. So let's say you have a client that is, 40%, then you're going to want to have 3 to 4 months operating expense in the business because you need a longer runway if that particular client leaves and you want to have time to scramble, get some new business, pay your bills so that you don't get behind all of that. So assuming you do not have a gorilla, 2 to 3 months of operating expense in your business. And then I want you to take another 2 to 3 months of operating expense out of the business. And again, remember, you've already paid taxes on it. This is not a taxable event for you, but you're going to take it out of the business and you're going to put it in your personal name in some sort of a liquid account, a money market account or something where you could lend it back into the business. Underline the word lend it back into the business if you needed to, if there's a crisis inside the business. So number one, you want to, if you're going to put the money back in, you're going to lend it at a reasonable interest rate, just like if you were getting a bank loan or you were putting a line of credit on the business. And you need to make sure you have a paper trail for that loan and you need to intend to pay that loan back. Just having the money in your own name and feeling it like it's your money will force you to make better decisions you will think long and hard about lending money back into the business to keep someone's job or to do something else when it's not already in the business. It completely changes your mindset around all of that. But you want to have the safety net. So this is a great compromise that allows you to make some money in the market or whatever you decide to do with it. And you also have the opportunity to lend it back, but you are not going to leave it in the business so you squander it. And then if you have additional money, which many of you do, beyond the, basically the 4 to 6 months of operating expense, if you have more money than that inside the business, get it out and put it somewhere. I don't care if you invest in, ponies or art or the market or real estate or whatever you want to do, but get it to work outside of the agency. The smart agency owner views their agency as an ATM machine, and you need to be making regular withdrawals from your ATM machine and building your wealth outside of the agency while you still own the agency. All right. So really wrap up, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. This really can be your best season, and you can be profitable at that 20% when you run by the numbers. You can set yourself up for future profitability by raising your rates like we talked about to 175 an hour and having more contracts in place and longer contracts in place. You can keep your A players and strengthen the entire team by investing in your best people now and throughout whatever happens in the next year. And you can build wealth for your own family by getting the excess money out of the business and putting it into whatever is your family's way of growing wealth outside of the agency. All right, that's
Awesome.
it. Questions?
Yeah, so we have a question that's come through from Leanna. What was your biggest takeaway or thing that you learned from going through the downturn that started in 2008?
Yeah, I think the two biggest things are actually the last two bullet points, which are the agencies left too much money in the business, and then because they were sort of hoping that things would get better, and it's one of those things where clients give you all kind of buying signals or prospects give you all kind of buying signals, and then they take their time to decide or they decide not to decide. So you're burning through your retained earnings rather than tightening the team the way you should. So it's a combination of not downsizing and leaving too much money in the business and spending it in the wrong way to avoid making difficult decisions. Those are the two most costly mistakes during this kind of a recession. If we have a recession as bad as what we saw in 7, 8, 9, that will be what puts many agencies out of business.
Interesting, thank you. So, Drew, speaking about like investing in your team and strengthening them now, I know that there's been this talent war and the struggle with the Great Resignation for the last what feels like a year and a half, almost 2 years now. As we're coming up on the end of the year and merit-based increases, CPI increases, things like that, how would you recommend kind of strategizing increases for your teams going into 2023 with
Yeah,
salary?
it's been interesting to watch that over even the course of this year. So a lot of agencies have done some sort of an across the board sort of nod to inflation with an across the board increase. Agencies are negotiating hard with their best players. Again, I can't imagine any of you has not had someone come to you and say, hey, I got a job offer. It's $20,000 more than what I'm making. I'd really like to stay here. So agency owners have to be really judicious about how they respond to that. There are some people that are worth more money, and there are other people it's like, you know what, we either can do without that person or that position, or we can replace them. That's not going to be as hard to replace. So I've watched a lot of discernment around raises when you're basically in a shootout for an employee. Merit-based raises, one of the things that I think is important to do is to map out what those are. Even if their raise is not going to come till February or March, sitting down with each employee and saying, look, we've looked at raises for the rest of 2022 and the first half of 23, and I want you to know that you will be getting a raise in we can't give everybody a raise at the same time. You had a raise a year ago or a year and a half ago or whatever it is. So your raise will go into effect in March, and tell them the amount. This is not the time to be circumspect about money. You have to tell them what to expect and when they can expect it. And again, this is a really great exercise. If you have an employee and you're like, I don't really want to give them a raise, what you're really saying is that employee probably is not somebody that should be on the team. And now would be a great time to go hunting for their replacement if you can sort of level up in that position, because now there's more people. And this was even before there was a lot of recession talk. 2022, by the end of the first quarter on, has been much easier for people to hire than it was previous to that. There's more candidates in the pool. There are better candidates in the pool. And while their salary requests are still higher than what we're used to, they're not the outlandish requests we were seeing in 2021. They have kind of mellowed out a little bit. So plan the merit increases, communicate the merit increases. And if your gut is telling you somebody doesn't deserve a raise, ask yourself the hard questions about whether or not they should be on the team and if you can trade up.
Yeah, excellent. And on that same sort of vein, what is your point of view on how transparent to be with all agency or all employees regarding agency financial health in an inflationary and recession year?
Yeah, here's the thing. They're thinking about it and they're wondering and they're making up a story in their head. So, and I assure you, the story they're making up is much worse than the truth. And so I am a firm believer. I mean, these are grown-ups. So I think you need to treat them like grown-ups, and you need to share with them what your goals are, how you are trending on the goals. If a client leaves, what does that mean? Talking to them about the fact that you have money in reserve. So if a client leaves, it doesn't mean everybody's going to get laid off the next day. Whatever the truth of your agency is, you need to share it with them. You don't need to show them all of the numbers, but you certainly should be talking to them about trends, about where you're at. Many of you are in a much better position than your employees think you are because you don't talk about it. And so I also think helping them understand, I was just with a bunch of agency owners, and one agency owner said that she gave everybody 100 M&Ms, and she said, okay, this is all the money we have for the agency. How many M&Ms of this 100? So if this represents all of our money, it's 100%. How many of the M&Ms do you think goes to salary and benefits? And she basically taught them, how much do you think goes to rent? How much do you think goes to your health insurance? How much do you, and when they were done, they ended up with like 7 M&Ms left. And she's like, this is what's left to do raises and profit sharing and all the other things. And here are some ways you can help me put more M&Ms into this pile, by getting better quotes from vendors. And she basically taught them what we call agency math. Make your employees your partner in managing the money of the agency. Let them help you be more profitable. Let them help you watch expenses. Let them help you think through challenges. You've hired smart people. Take advantage of it. And again, you can keep them completely in the dark, but that doesn't mean that they're not telling themselves their own story. And I think you'd rather have them hear the truth and hear it from you.
I really love that analogy, that story that she did. That I think is a great way of getting your team engaged in it without giving them real numbers and things like that.
That's right.
May just go right over their head. Yeah. Okay, so there's a pricing related question. Have you seen agencies productize, meaning offering a set product or service at a set price? For example, a website refresh is at X dollars. I think this is like more of a value-based question. Steve, correct me in the chat if that's incorrect, but does that make sense? Does that question make sense, Drew?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of that where people are basically, it's the flat fee is this. And so in many cases, what they're saying is, look, you can have a good, better, best option of your web refresh. And here's the bullet pointed list for the good, and it's $10,000. And here's the bullet pointed for the better, and it's $15,000. And here's the bullet pointed for the best, and it's X. So yes, I see a lot of people sort of creating that quicker to sale, by not having to say, well, I'll come back to you with a proposal and blah, blah, blah. I think the danger is, remember, that's basically a promise. So you're saying, we're going to do these things for you for this amount of money. So you want to make sure that you really have done the estimation well. And I'll tell you, agencies are terrible at doing estimates. And here's why. We go around and we say, Bob, how long is it going to take you to write this thing? And Mary, how long is it going to take you to code this thing? And Jeff, how long is it going to take you to design this thing? And everyone gives you their best answer, but their best answer is really, boy, here's what they're saying, not saying to you, but what's happening in their head. Boy, if I could sit down and do that without any interruptions, I can get that done in 3 hours. Well, none of us live in that world. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and do your estimate that way, like normal, but then I want you to multiply it by 1.3 or 1.5, depending on how bad your estimates typically are. And that's actually what your estimate should be. I've seen agencies double their profitability by just using that estimate hack alone. So before you set prices that are now a promise, I would for sure apply the 1.3 multiplier or the 1.5 multiplier. And then I think it's a great way to shortcut sales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. We were on the questions one. So we got about 14 minutes. So we got time for a few more questions, maybe 2 more. If you have questions, add them to the chat. Drew, if you have anything kind of along those veins that you just want to add, based on the types of questions that are coming in. Otherwise, we can kind of wrap this up into your contact information as well.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is, now is the time to act. You know, you're probably coming off of a very strong year. Most of you are pretty busy in the fourth quarter. If you are sort of representative of most of the agencies we're talking to and the finances that we're seeing, so you're in a really great position to make these corrections now, as opposed to having to make them in the panic of a moment if a big client leaves you or something else happens. So better to do it now when you are sort of clear-headed and in a great position financially. And if you're not in a great position financially, even more important to get these things done as quickly as possible to turn the tide so that you can weather whatever's coming in 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is one last question. Is there a formula on paying a biz dev person that you can share?
Yeah, so biz dev, if they are a full-time biz dev person, first of all, you know, it's very challenging to find somebody who is good at both talking about agency work and talking through the case studies and the great results we landed for clients, and a good salesperson. That's a unique skill set. So if you have one of those, that's a beautiful thing, and you need to keep them happy. Most new business people never end up paying for themselves. So first of all, if you're going to hire a biz dev person, you have to give them a full year, because it's going to take them that long to be able to prove to you whether they can or cannot do it. Number 2, you've got to give them a fair amount of your attention and time. They cannot do it in a vacuum. You can't just send them out to a trade show or whatever and think they're going to bring back really good, juicy pieces of business for you. They might bring back piddly little projects, but if you really want them to bring substantial clients to you, you need to invest some time with them. So the way that you would build their compensation is, you know, a relatively small base. In the first year, the base might be higher, but it's going to escalate down as you get closer to the year mark. And then you're going to want to build the commission structure so that they are incented to go get the kind of clients you want. So, you know, you get no commission on a client that is smaller than X. And for every one of you, that X number is going to be different. And then you're going to escalate up the commission based on the size of the client. And if there are particular traits of a client, like we want them in this industry, or we want them to, you know, be in Series B funding, or whatever it is that makes whatever is closest to your ideal client, you want to put kickers in to the commission so that they're aiming at the exact clients that you want. So you want to build the commission structure to incent them to go after your ideal client. Another couple things. Number 1, they should never collect any commission longer than 1 year. If you keep a client after they've won the client for a year, they have not earned that commission. Your team has earned their retention of that client. So what you don't want to keep paying commission on clients that have been embedded in the business for a bunch of years. Because what happens is then your new business person gets kind of fat and happy, and they're making a bunch of money without doing any effort, which does not encourage them to go out and sell more things. Number two, you've got to have a really good handoff system so that you can hand the prospect, you want to bring the AE that's going to work on the business into the sales process before it closes so that they can begin to foster a relationship, so that handoff from the new business person to the account person is seamless and easy and way early in the process, so that people don't get too enamored with your biz dev person, because many of you make the mistake of saying, oh, well, sure, yes, he's our new business person, but he can also be your account person because I know you love him. And pretty soon that person has no time or motivation to go sell. So that's some things to think about as you're structuring a biz dev person.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Drew. And just kind of a last note. So, Drew, you have a conference that you host every summer. Would you mind sharing a little bit about the BABA Summit?
Yeah, so the Build a Better Agency Summit is in May. It is in Chicago this year. It's May 16th and 17th. So it's 2 days. You'll be with about 350 other agency owners and leaders, amazing keynote speakers, breakouts, but we also have structured things where you get to spend a lot of time talking to other agency owners and sharing secrets back and forth. And I think you'll find the AMI community is super generous with sharing what they know. We have a return rate of, I think it's 70% of the people who go to the conference come back the next year. We've only done it 2 years, and we've sold it out both years. So if you're interested in that, would love for you to go over to the AMI website and read more about it. But we would love to have you join us. It's a very energizing 2 days. You will leave with a notebook full of things to do, things to stop doing, new resources, new people who understand exactly what you're going through because they're walking in your same shoes. So you'll make some great friends and connections as well. And that's really our goal, is just to sort of surround people with other people who do what they do so that they can learn from each other.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Drew. And I can confirm it's a fantastic conference, one of the most engaging agency summits that I've ever been at. So I highly recommend, if you guys have some time and the resources to attend, to definitely do it. And you can find that at agencymanagementinstitute.com.
Yep.
Awesome. So we'll wrap things up. Just one final plug for the function point. We have a 2023 industry report survey. If you all have a minute to go and fill out some information about your agency and the industry that you're in, this is extremely valuable for ourselves as a function point to continue to evolve our product to fit where the industry is going, as well as to give you all insights into productivity, profitability, resourcing trends from agencies all across the creative industry. You do, if you complete the survey, you are entered into winning a gift card, and you also get early access to the report. So please take a minute to do that. You'll be getting the slide deck and the recording within 24 hours. And of course, if you have any additional questions, you can reach out to myself, to Drew, and to sales@functionpoint.com.
Yep, absolutely happy to hear from any of you folks if I can answer more questions or questions you didn't want to ask with everybody here. So happy to do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Drew, for your time. Thank you, everyone who attended, for your engagement and your excellent questions. We look forward to the next time that we get together.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks so much. Bye, all.